record this. You look great.
Oh, thank you.
Wow.
Got a haircut, the first haircut since February.
I almost, if
Yeah.
my barber was open today, I would have gotten one.
Yeah, no, I couldn't take it any longer. It was just like enough.
Was he wearing a mask?
Yes.
Or she?
She was wearing a mask, very limited clients, only one client at a time. And yeah.
Yeah, I don't think my hairdresser or my barber is that cognizant of what
Yeah,
takes it.
my husband's barber actually one client at a time and wearing a mask. Both wearing a mask. I was wearing a mask the whole time too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And could he cut my beard through my mask?
I don't know. My husband was surprised that he was able to get around the ears and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, whatever.
I might have to go to his barber because my
Yeah.
barber, I don't think cares. What town is he in?
Hartsdale.
Okay.
Yeah, Hartsdale.
All right. I might need that as a,
Uh-huh.
because I'll look in and I can tell in 2 seconds and he was wearing a mask too. All right. So you may want to, if he doesn't mind, I may need to have the name of the barber.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, well, let's start. We'll officially start. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Uniquely Normal, a Rod Bernstein podcast. I'm Rod Bernstein.
And I'm Marion Anderson.
And you're Marion Anderson, who's joining us today. And today we're going to be discussing the opening of schools, which is the issue of the day, of the morning. And Marion is a good friend of mine. She's the executive director for the last 12 years of Heartsong, which is a music and art and dance movement therapy center. And it's terrific. I've been there. I've worked there. It's great. And she's also the director of a preschool, which has been successfully running through this COVID crisis. And that's what we'll concentrate on today. And I think this will greatly help you, your neighbors, your loved ones. I know so many people right now are making these decisions of what to do with their kid, what to do with their daughter who might be a teacher, right? It's a whole family kind of thing through this epidemic. So thanks for listening. Enjoy the episode. And the first thing that comes to mind is that you've been open since May.
Yes.
So that's really striking that everyone's talking about September. There was an article that I read this morning that almost 100,000 kids were tested with the virus in the last 2 weeks of July. So everyone is just concerned with what's happening now in July and September. And you've been open since May, and you said there haven't been cases. So
I think the difference here is you're hearing about cases where the incidence of COVID is through the roof. 25%, 14%, 15%. Our center did close March through May, but in May, the numbers of cases, deaths, hospitalizations, cases has dropped significantly. So right now, New York is at slightly under 1% of the population is testing positive. So it's a very different thing between New York and Florida and New York and Texas and New York and Georgia, where the numbers of people who are contracting COVID are skyrocketing. In New York, that's totally different. So that's the first thing I think everybody has to really take into mind, that New York has really gotten it under control.
So, okay, I understand that, but you are the one basically making that decision in May, and I mean, it's such an emotional decision that to come to that decision. Are you consulting with teachers? You're consulting with parents? I mean, it's like you need to have everybody, I guess, on board, and not everyone it's impossible to get everyone on board.
Not
You're
everybody
the
is.
one making that decision. And so you're the executive person there. And just help us go through that decision-making
So
process.
the first thing is childcare, daycare. It's a regulated industry, and it's considered an essential service. So there were many centers that stayed open throughout the entire pandemic in New York that had their protocols in place and did not have any issues whatsoever. Our numbers were dropping. We had families that were starting to go back to work. The numbers were lowering. So we made the decision based upon what we saw in New York, the governor telling us, what was happening with the numbers, our parents, weekly emails that we were sending out. We were looking at the Office for Children and Family Services, their guidances, Center for Disease Control, guidances, and New York State Department of Health guidances on how you actually can attempt to do this. So also the Child Care Council of Westchester as another resource. So it was taking all of these different resources and synthesizing the information and working through it.
So I'm thinking of a mother who has a teacher in your school, and I'm hearing all of that. I understand that, but it's my daughter who's teaching.
Right.
It comes from a different place. So you must have had some pushback from somebody along the line. And if so, how do you handle that?
Absolutely. People have to come to this, and I'm pretty much in agreement with the governor on this, is people have to come to their decision from their own personal standpoint, what they are comfortable with. We have some families that were totally comfortable, and on May 19th, they were there at the door with their child, ready to go. Protocols, many protocols in place using all of those guidances. Staff are all wearing masks. It's an enclosed center. So we opened up with 8 children. When we closed on March 13th, we had 104 children in the building.
Wow.
So it was a significant drop. So a lot of people were not happy doing it or comfortable doing it. So we started out with 8 children. June, we went to 16. July, we went to 66. August, we've gone to 70. I think as we're going through it, people are talking to each other. We're following the protocols every single day. Temperatures are taken for every child. 10 questions, COVID-related questions, are asked every single day. If anyone has any sign of illness, they are excluded for 3 days. And if that illness doesn't resolve, say they have something more than a head cold, they need to go to the doctor, get tested, and they cannot return until they have a clear test. And that's happened a couple of times that someone has a sore throat, and knock on wood, no one has come back with a COVID positive test. So hand washing, mask, lots and lots of sanitation throughout the building, maintaining pods that each classroom stays together. Each group of teachers stays with their class. There is no mixing of staff between rooms. There are no mixing of children between rooms. You keep it stable. They go to the playground separately. They clean up after they're done with their playground. Everything is separate with the small group of children. The other thing that we started is in May, groups were allowed to be 8 children. Then it went to 10 children, and it's gone to 15. We are still under 15, primarily running at about 9 or 10 children per group. We've shortened the hours to be able to make sure we have all the staff to maintain that separate care, but it's also being able to monitor the health and safety, temperatures, and all of those COVID checks throughout the course of the day. It is a process all day long, every single day to be able to do it.
Wow.
And parents are on board for it. So the more parents that came and found out what we were doing and how we were managing it, the more comfortable they're feeling with it.
So,
And the big piece is
I'm
the
sorry.
children are loving they really miss the socialization. And they really are able to maintain social distancing. However, the children are not required to wear masks. The adults wear masks, the children do not wear masks. If the children leave the premises, they put a mask on. But other than that, they're fine.
So, so the kids in that classroom, the 10, 15, 8, 10, 15 kids, are they acting pretty much normally together? They're together the whole time. I guess what you're saying, you know, a daycare will have a music teacher come in, or you know, you're not having any special.
We're not having any outside people. None of the parents are allowed in the building. So the building is really staffed with children.
So within that classroom, if I looked at that classroom, would it be a normal classroom? Are the kids interacting and socializing together?
They're interacting and socializing. They're keeping distance. They're keeping smaller groups.
Still.
Yeah. So if they're eating, they are eating apart from each other. If they are napping, they are napping apart from each other. Do they play games together? Yes. If anyone touches toys and things like that, things are washed immediately and sanitized. A lot of sanitation going on. And they know how to do it. You know, so they, throughout the hallways, we've got 8-foot markers and they walk in a line, keeping their distance.
So if a kid comes in and he's upset, they're little kids, they're 4-year-old, you know, they're crying. Mm-hmm. Another kid can't go over to him. And you know what I mean? It's like, there's a balance there, right?
I think you have to recognize that they're little kids and they are going to touch each other. You're going to encourage them to keep their distance. Of course, you're going to comfort them. Of course, they're going to comfort each other. But are they going to be playing in groups of 6 and 7 kids in the block area? No. Will it be 1 or 2 children playing together? Somewhat distance, but together, yes. You know, they can manage it. They're very smart. I think a lot of times I'm hearing parents are panicked that their kids are not going to be able to maintain the protocols. Yes, they can.
That's interesting. And these are little kids.
And these are little kids. They can manage it. They understand it, and they're very good with it. They know that it is different, so and they know when to put their mask on.
So, I mean, I looked at your site, and you have infants. So are we talking about 3, 4, 5-year-olds, or?
We're talking about, okay, so our center does have infants. How can you socially distance with infants? You can't.
Right.
So the staff wear masks. We do a lot of personal protection regarding bodily fluids, keeping ourselves covered, using gloves for sanitation. But babies are going to be babies. You're going to limit the number of toys on the shelves so you're not cleaning so much. You're going to take things like stuffed animals that will hold saliva and bodily fluids. You're not going to have those things in the classroom. So the materials in the classroom are going to change somewhat, that you're going to have hard surfaces that can be washed and disinfected easily. You're not going to have stuffed animals. You're not going to allow the children to bring toys from home. We're going to have little separate bags of markers and crayons and things that are their separate bags of things. So as much as possible, you separate them and you separate the materials.
It's fascinating. Who would think, like, you know, stuff, no stuff. I mean, there's 100 of those things that.
There's 100 of those things.
That people.
Right. You know, so if they have Play-Doh, they have little bags of Play-Doh. That's their little bag of Play-Doh that they play with. Yeah.
And you're not nobody is really tested unless you said somebody is sick and they go to the doctor. So you don't do any kind of routine. You didn't test all the teachers because
No,
we can't control the environments of
no,
everybody. So
no.
you're not doing that, which is interesting to me.
You know, it's the symptoms, respiratory
Yeah.
symptoms, loss of taste of smell, headaches, vomiting, diarrhea. I mean, there's a whole list of symptoms. If you have any of those symptoms, you are going to be excluded. Have you left the country in the last 14 days? Have you left the tri-state area? All of our staff and families sign attestations that they will self-check at home, take temperatures before they come in and don't come in. And then everyone signs a waiver about traveling to those 30, I think it's 34 banned states that they cannot come back for 14 days and they'll come back with the test at that point. So go to one of those states, you can't come back for 14 days and you must get a COVID test before you come back.
And there's a nurse, I guess there's a nurse on staff who makes
We do have a nurse who's part-time on staff who helps us with all of our protocols also.
Wow. You said something very interesting in the beginning.
What's that?
That daycare, what's that? That it said many things, but that daycare is a necessary service.
Yes.
And that's sort of, it's not for me to say, but it's sort of the reason in a way why kids in elementary school, it's a necessary service for the parents to, go to work. So that's sort of like a big argument. And you brought it right up front that daycare is a mandated or necessary service.
It's necessary.
That's kind of seeping into the rest of elementary and high school education.
You know, so I think there's a battle here and it becomes a political battle where people, say that public school is not an essential service because you don't, but people rely on school, especially for their K through 6 children and their childcare. It's just the reality of it. It's education and childcare. What we do at Cornerstone Children's Center is education and childcare. It's both. So parents have to go to work. Essential workers, nurses, doctors, firemen, DPW workers, Con Ed workers. There's so many people that have to go to work and they have children. Those children need care and they need good care. So it's our responsibility to provide something that is going to address the health and safety. So the statistics are showing that doctors and nurses that are wearing masks and all the PPE are not the ones that are getting sick. It's the people who are not, So when I put my mask on, I'm protecting everybody out there. So that's our strategy, is we're putting our mask on. So you looked at that school in Georgia where so many kids were sick. You saw the pictures. The hallways were crowded and very, very, very few, you could probably count them on your finger, of the children or the staff in the hallway had masks on. Put the mask on, wash your hands. It really does make a difference. It really does.
So it kind of, there are two powerful forces here. One is safety. In other words, I'm not going to ask you because it's a silly question, but everyone's thinking of the same thing. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you say? What do you do when there are schools that do not or cannot or will not set the protocols like you have?
Then they shouldn't be open.
They just shouldn't be open.
They just shouldn't be open.
Period. Okay.
Period. And if I were a parent in one of those schools, I wouldn't send my child to one of those schools. I would never send. I've got a grandchild in Georgia. She's staying home because she needs to stay home because of the protocols or the lack of protocols in the schools down there. Yeah.
And that's it. I mean, if the parent says I have to go to work or this or that, it's you don't have any qualms about that. You're clear.
No. Number one, the parents have to feel comfortable with whatever it is they're doing. Everybody has a very different situation. There are a lot of parents that are still working from home. and there are a lot of parents that are not working from home. So every single circumstance is different. I guess the thing that's helpful is for the ones that actually stay home, it helps for those parents that do need to send their children to school, because it will lessen the number of children in the environment and help with the social distancing. So I just think that both need to happen. We've got right now, out of my 104 that should have been in my center, we're just at 70, so it helps, to be able to distance and to keep the group small and to do all the things that you need to do.
So here's a question that that you may or may not like getting, but it's real, that you start with 8 kids in May. I mean, there must be a financial hit, and you, right? And you have to, I guess, let people go. And I mean, like the auxiliary staff, like a music teacher. Well, you're not going into, I mean, like, give us an inside story of that whole thing.
So, we went from May 19th, opened up with 8. Our enrollment had been projected at 104. Wow. Huge financial hit. About $500,000.
Wow.
Yes.
Are you funded by this?
No, we are not funded by the state.
Totally private.
Is the COVID release dollars from the federal government. The PPE was able to bring my staff back, and the EDIL is able to also help with some of the COVID related things. However, it's still a struggle, which is why we had to cut hours to be able to maintain the groups that we needed to maintain. So there are a lot of intricate decisions that we have to make, but costs such as gloves that staff wear for diaper changing and that sort of thing went from $20 a case to $60 a case. Yeah. So the additional cost for thermometers and masks and all of those things that have, it's a tremendous expense. And, the federal dollars did help with it, but at the end of the day, we also have to kind of balance that with enrollment and also balance that with staffing and then the amount of hours that we can actually give. So a lot of communication with families who's working from home, who can manage shortened hours. Most of them can right now. And it's just an ongoing odyssey at this point to see how this can happen.
Like when I was young, there's something wrong about this picture. The government is saying it's essential, and then they're not giving you things like, gloves and diapers. It's like, right. you have to stay open, but like at least give us a bulk of this stuff, which
right,
which they can do. I mean, it's
right.
within their capacity to just
right.
say, okay, for every daycare center, we're going to give you a load full of diapers and gloves and some, there's some of these simple things.
Sanitation. So, I think that's also part of the challenge in the public schools, that so many parents going back into the public schools are really concerned about the sanitation and the cleaning and the supplies to do it. So, I was watching something this morning, Clorox wipes. They're next to impossible to get. And they're saying there's going to be shortages for at least another year. This is something that we're going to have to be living with for at least another year or maybe more. We're going to be wearing masks for a long time. Let's just get used to it and get on with it.
What I think you're, in a real practical way, because I'm practical in my work, and just practically speaking, I think you're going to be, it's a wealth of information that you have that we haven't touched upon, and we won't because it gets boring after a while. But there are people out there who are probably going to, call me or call you or me through you. It's like things like you told me when we were talking the other day, that we can't use bubbles.
Right.
I
You
mean,
cannot
like, who would,
use the bubble machine, but you cannot blow
right,
bubbles
like,
because you think about that.
who thinks about it?
How does COVID spread?
Yeah.
You know, so.
But this is where you're on the front lines. You had 0 cases since May,
Right.
you know, so you're the model. I don't know if you see yourself as a model, but in my head, you know, in my mind, you're a model program, and there are these hundreds of daycare centers that are open that may not have as good luck as you, and you could take the bubble example, and they're going, yeah, of course, you know, but there are probably so many things like that you have thoroughly thought of inside out, and you're
that you
successful.
haven't thought of.
I'd say something.
It's always
Yeah.
something new. You know, it's challenging because the staff doesn't always think about it. You know, so simple things like our kids would eat family style and they would pass and serve. We can't do that anymore. Everybody has individually packaged food, period. That's it. You know, so.
You know, and I work with these kids, and food is a learning.
Right, exactly.
Tool.
Exactly.
To share.
Exactly.
Hey, come
pass
on.
the bread. You no longer can pass the bread.
Sharing is one of the fundamental developmental strides of
Right.
anybody, especially young kids.
Right.
And it's so weird. If you're saying we have to do this, we have to train our kids not to share. Isn't that mind-blowing?
It is mind-blowing. It is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
You know, I think adults forget about the resiliency of children. They're so resilient. And if you work with them and you don't panic and you go about your day and remind them of things without hysteria, they manage it very, very well. Very, very well. It's the adults. The children, I think, have an easier time. And I think that's also part of what you're seeing with school-age parents is they're panicking for their kids. Oh my God, they can't wear a mask all day. Oh my God, they can't do this. And oh my God, but they can. And they will do it willingly. And if you're calm about it, they'll be calm about it.
Yeah, people have asked me, parents, like, what do I say throughout this whole thing? What do I say to my kid? And my answer is often like, we don't know what's going to happen next week. So just be honest and open.
Exactly.
You don't know, and that's okay because we're figuring this all out together.
Exactly. And that's really the message is we're figuring it out all together. As things come up, we adapt, we change, and you know, we hope for the best, but we try to implement protocols and procedures that are going to lessen the risk for everyone. And we're now starting to see more and more people are looking for childcare because they have to get back to work.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So here's a question. I know you thought of everything else. You must have thought of this as well. What would happen, and this is a universal question, what would happen if a teacher got tested positively for COVID? So, I mean, what do you do?
Okay, number one, the classroom would be closed. Number two, we would call the Department of Health, and the Department of Health would come in and give us the exact protocols of what we need to do.
Now, will those kids in that classroom, would they all stay home? Would they all get tested?
Most likely, they would all stay home.
They would stay home for 2 weeks.
Yes, and this is why you create little pods, because then you can send that one little pod home and operate the rest.
Yeah.
If you maintain really sterile, clean pods, that pod goes home, you've sterilized the room, and 2 weeks later they can come back after.
That's boy, that's an easy answer to a question I thought would maybe a difficulty. But now I never saw you, in your teaching environment there, but I know you personally. You seem to be a hands-on person, no pun intended, but you seem to be very hands-on. So you're you're floating, I guess, no? Aren't you kind of checking to see how
I
things
am
are?
checking. However, if I go to a room, I don't go into the rooms as much. I have cameras in the rooms. I can see what's going on. If I do
Oh,
go in the room, I will stay by the door and not really go into the room. If the kids say hello to me, I will give them an elbow bump and not a high five anymore. Um, so it's those adaptations, but I'm wearing my mask. I really don't venture too far into any room, just to kind of maintain that bubble.
so you probably, my guess is you're using the cameras more because now you have a situation in a class of 10, 15 kids with one teacher, right?
No,
Well, we'll,
not with one teacher.
we'll talk about that in a minute. I know
Yeah.
that's, but you have a teacher in a room with several kids, and there might be a kid who's having some kind of issue, and now the teacher has to make a decision: should this kid go, leave their little pod and sit, with a nurse or you or right, and like that's like it's not an easy decision anymore. I mean, I'm imagining your place is like, hey, wait a second, you have to keep an eye on these kids a little more than usual. Do you find yourself looking at the camera?
And the staff are on high alert, but staff are not alone. This is part of this whole COVID thing is now you have to have 2 staff in every room at all times, and sometimes there's 3. So there are ratios that need to be met. So nobody's ever alone. They've got a health and safety protocol. So if there are certain things going on, they can pick up an intercom, they can call me, they can bring a child down to me. We'll take a look at that child and make a determination as to whether they go home. If they look like they're sick, then we have to keep that child separate from the rest of the class at that point until they are picked up, which has to be done within a certain period of time.
So these cameras and intercom that may not be in these very poor areas, I mean, that seems to be sort of an essential part of this whole mechanism. That you can communicate at any time.
You need to be able to communicate. I mean, there are some centers that have walkie-talkies.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
You
don't have that, but some do.
Yeah, some do have walkie-talkies. We have phones that have intercoms. If you really had to, you're really not supposed to do this. I suppose you could use a cell phone, but you're really not supposed to have that kind of technology in the classroom.
Oh, because
Miss Lucy, the teacher, decides that she wants to take a picture of little Johnny, and isn't he so cute? And I'm going to put that picture on Facebook.
Okay.
That's a tremendous breach. Or Miss Lucy is supposed to be interacting with the children, and instead she's on her phone and she's texting or she's talking to someone. So New York State really deems that technology should not be in the classroom.
That makes sense.
I agree with.
And if Miss Lucy has an emergency with her kid, they go to school.
Somebody should call the main desk and call Miss Lucy.
And they all know that, and they have that.
So we make adaptations to it.
So when you started this, you had to educate the teachers. Well, you had to educate the teachers and the staff.
Yes.
Did you have people come in? Were you the one, explaining the protocols and all of this?
I'm constantly explaining the protocols.
Yeah, when I say all of this, I really mean all of
it. Explaining the protocols. But before we opened, we had staff meetings. Everyone got a written list of the protocols. We had to sign and fill out for the Department of Health protocols and best practices, and really kind of identify the things that we're doing. So New York State Department of Health really has put out a lot of really great information that includes information from CDC of what you should be doing within the environment. So we wrote up our own policy. We wrote up that policy. The staff signed off on it. The parents signed off on it. They know what we're doing within the center.
So you took all the information out there, which is a ton. You wrote your own policy.
Yes.
Wow.
Synthesized it.
For
our particular site. Because every site is different, and that's basically what they're saying with the public schools. every school is different. The physical plant, the staffing, all of those things. So you have to take all of that into consideration. Where are they going to be dropped off? Where are they going to be picked up? So it's from the second the client comes to the program to the second that they leave the program, you have to think about every single step of the day. Every single step. What happens? What happens when they go outside? What happens when they go to the bathroom? Who takes them to the bathroom? All of those things, whole thing has to be really spelled out.
And are the kids coming by bus, or their parents are coming?
No, the parents drop them off.
The parents drop them off.
Yes.
Okay, that simplifies things a little bit.
Yeah, so in a couple of weeks when school starts up, we're going to have some school age kids that may be coming in on a bus. So now we're starting on those protocols.
Oh, okay. So
After
you go
school.
until what? So how high do you go? I thought it was preschool.
Fifth grade.
Oh,
School age
okay.
children, they come before school and after school, but now looking at it, we may have some school age children 3 full days a week.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, are you in charge of that as well?
Yes, that's part of the program. It is part of the program.
So are you a little nervous about that? That now you have kids who are 8 years old and, they don't feel like, wearing a mask or whatever. I don't know. I don't know.
They know what they need to do. We've been dealing with these kids for a while with their homework. They don't feel like they're doing their homework. They do their homework. It's just, I think a lot of it is expectations. They know what's expected of them. So you lay out the expectations very, very early on with the children. So now we're looking at what those protocols would look like with these older children.
Yeah.
In.
Many
of them will be the same, but we may have some differences that we need to deal with.
So, I'm with kids a lot, and this may sound like a silly question, but do you still sit in, groups, okay, spaced out, and are kids singing? If you're happy, clap your hand. Are they? They're still singing. They're still
singing. We're not going to yell. We're going to do some singing, but not a whole lot of singing. We'll cut back on those things, and we do know that singing is a super spreader. We're going to keep them distance if they're singing. A little bit more than 6 feet. 8 feet is probably the best thing to do when you're doing those super spreader things. But I think the older children, no, I wouldn't do it with. But with the 2-year-old, yes.
Yeah.
Because they're learning vocabulary and they're learning how to talk, and so how do they learn how to talk? Finger play, singing, dancing, all of those type of things that we're going to encourage, but we do try to split them. So if you have 3 teachers in a classroom with 6 toddlers, one teacher is working with 2 in one area, another one takes 2 over here, and another one takes 2 over there. It's just really classroom management style and learning to do those things.
Wow. So if you needed to give someone in your position advice, because you've twisted your mind inside out a few times during this process. Well, let me ask you, I'll save that question. Just another thing before that. As you're ultimately making these decisions, do you have, personal advisors or friends or people who've done this before? Or do you go to somebody and say, hey, what do you think? What do you think? Or you're just kind of taking all the information and saying, that makes sense. This idea of singing.
You can't do it by yourself. So I have parents in the program that are nurses, parents in the program that are doctors. I've done webinars with New York State. I have done, I'm still part of a group of directors that have not opened up yet, so they're picking my brain, but it helps. Their questions actually help generate things that I may not have thought about. So I think I have spoken to, along the way, probably about 50 directors.
Oh, wow.
Different centers. Everybody with a different story, everyone with a different approach. I've been on webinars with the Child Care Council of Westchester, which has got 40 directors on it. So you got to stay connected in the field and talk with everybody, but also just having my medical advice, my doctors, my nurses, etc. That, you know, and our own nurse who was on site, giving us guidance. What do you think about this? Yes, no.
I think that's fascinating for me to hear, at least, because what you get publicly is that you get guidelines,
Right.
you know, but you're saying, okay, I know the guidelines, I've seen the guidelines, and I still have to reach out to 50 people or more to kind of, you know, just filter everything out to know what I do with that kid, which is what everyone is concerned. They're concerned with their kid or their grandkid or their son who's a teacher. And you've kind of said, yes, I did a lot of thinking, a lot of work. I went beyond the guidelines to try to figure out what is best for that teacher and that kid.
Right, exactly.
And to me, that's remarkable. I don't know if people understand that.
But I think that's what's happening in the public schools, and they're not doing a very good PR job of getting it out there. That, you know, initially I know they had these massive meetings with all the superintendents, and then within the school district they're having the meetings, and now the governor has now mandated that there needs to be 3 to 5 sessions with parents and community before they can open, plus 2 sessions with teachers before they open. So they're laying the groundwork for those conversations, but I just feel people are in this panic mode and they're not really listening that all of these things are actually happening.
But you didn't need to be told. You didn't need to be mandated.
No.
It's different. It's different. I worked in the Board of Ed too. It's different when they said, okay, this is mandated, this you have to do this, from something that's really coming from within yourself, that I need this because I need this in order to have a healthy environment. It just feels different.
You know, so it's a place of, I want to keep myself healthy because I'm considered a high risk group, but I also want to keep everybody else around me healthy. So how do I approach that? I want to keep people safe and I want to keep my business open. So how am I going to do that? I've got to keep everybody safe as best as I possibly can. You know, so it's a constant think tank. You know, and I still do those calls with different directors all the time and hear how they're doing things.
So personally, I haven't seen a friend since this whole thing started, right? So, but I'm me and you're you in this position. Personally, how are you conducting yourself, your daily life, your weekends?
My weekends, I'm usually home. You know, I'm wearing my mask. I go to the supermarket, but I'm not going to the beach and I'm not going to crazy, you know, places with a lot of people. I'm a homebody. I sit on my deck and I drink my beer.
You strike me as a party animal, though.
No, I'm not. I'm not. I'll party on my deck by myself with my husband, and that's about it. You know, I'm not going to take any risk at all.
Yeah. And I guess the teachers there feel, you can't tell them what to do in their personal life, but I guess they kind of feel the same.
Rob, you there?
I'm here. Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. My battery went dead on my computer. I didn't have it plugged up. So.
Oh, okay.
So, Fran gave me a plug for my phone, so we're now on phone.
Fran is right there for
She's
you.
just like, she ran right in here and took care of me.
That's like radar from MASH.
Exactly. So my computer went dead.
Okay.
So
I mean, do your teachers feel that same kind of responsibility?
well, we always have this conversation about it, you know. So if you're going out and partying, I really don't want you here. You need to be careful.
So you actually say that to them?
I really do say that to them. And my parents know it. So they all have travel waivers that, you know, they know that if I find out that they're going into one of vacation to one of those hot spots, that their job's on the line.
What do you call a travel what?
Waiver. A travel waiver. Yeah, I had an attorney you know, write something up for me that we call a travel waiver, that they agree that if they leave the New York State area, that they will let me know where they're going. And we're going to make a determination whether it's safe or not. So wow. I just had a family this morning tell me that they're going out of the country to an African country. And it's like, okay, it's on the list of countries. You cannot come back. 14-day quarantine, and they should have a test before they come back.
That's,
you know, but it takes a village. So we all have to work together, and they need to understand that you're putting yourself at risk. I'm not going to allow you, if I can, to put everybody else at risk.
To me, that's fascinating for one reason, that it's like they may feel that their rights are being infringed about. It's my weekend's my time. I should do what I want, and you need to protect yourself and the kids, and so it's just a very interesting legal thing in my mind. I have to consult my kid on that, but it's really interesting that they have to sign a travel waiver. And what happens? They say, "Hey, you know, I don't have to tell you where I'm going," and it's just an interesting dynamic. But your mind is clear. You know what you need to do. This is one of those things where I know now, talking with you, this doesn't come from, you know, an automatic 3-second conversation. This filters down from all of that information that you've gotten, probably also talking to lawyers as well.
Absolutely. I have spoken to lawyers, and, you know, my lawyer, like you, is all holed up at home and hasn't been out because of this. But I
have an advantage, by the way. My kid's at home. He's a lawyer, but he's living at home now, so it's great.
Okay. You know, so, you know, it's coming from a place of making sure that it is a communal thing, which is unfortunate that in other states, it's not coming from that place. It's coming from a political stance that you're infringing upon my rights and whatever. That's not where I'm coming from. This is a communal thing. I'm going to take care of you, but you need to take care of me. And that's the foundation that you have to build upon, is that everybody is in this boat together and we're taking care of each other.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You have to take care of yourself, even if that means restrictions on your personal liberties, if you want to.
Exactly. And if you're, you know, going to do those things, you're going to let us know, and you're going to take the appropriate precautions of quarantining for 14 days. And you're required, actually, in New York State to quarantine. There's a $2,000 to $10,000 fine if you go to one of those hot states and then do not quarantine. You know, so
how about going now? These aren't just countries; these are also states.
Yeah, there's 34 states that are travel banned in New York. You know, do you go to the beach on the weekend? Go to the beach, but don't be foolish.
Right.
You know, do things. Nobody's saying don't do things. It's just don't be foolish about it. You know, don't go to a motorcycle thing with 25,000 other bikers.
Hey, that's my thing.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so it's.
Hey, that's what I live for.
I'll take care of me, you take care of you, and then that way we're taking care of each other. That's really the bottom line to the whole thing.
So I'm thinking of another question about like the janitorial staff that has to be there. There could be spills any time of day. They have to be on guard. Is that one of those things where you just do the best you can, or what do you say to that?
Okay, so the staff during the course of the day, they're cleaning their spaces. They're doing their sanitation.
Oh,
They are impeccable. Their rooms are clean. They wipe things down. They have logs that they check off that they've washed down the faucet, and they've washed down the tables, and they've washed down the chairs. At the end of the day, when everybody's gone, the janitorial staff comes in and does it all over again.
wow. Oh, okay. So if there's like a huge spill of, I don't know, juice or water, and it's all over the place, the teacher will
They will clean it up. They have enough staff that somebody can go get a mop and mop it up and clean it.
wow. And there's a checklist. That's what I mean. There's 100 things that I would never.
Yeah, no, there's a checklist for every area. The bathroom, did I clean the bathroom when I'm done? Did I clean the playground? What I did. The cleaning company has a checklist. Everybody has checklists to make sure everything's done. Is the front desk clean? Are the pens clean? Are the thermometers clean?
Wow.
Door buzzers, door handles. I mean, but it becomes routine.
But nobody wears gloves, right?
During the course of the day, generally we're not wearing gloves, but if you're cleaning, you may wear gloves. And
Right.
if you're changing diapers and things like that, you are wearing gloves.
Yeah. And are the bathrooms, is there a bathroom in each classroom?
No.
Oh, okay. So it's a communal bathroom.
Yeah. And each classroom uses it at a separate time. So they're not allowed to mix kids in the bathroom.
Sounds like
And
segregation.
when that classroom is done using the bathroom, one staff member stays behind and disinfects
Wow.
before the next group can go in.
Wow.
Wow.
These are little kids. If a kid has to go to the bathroom, you just say, no, you have to wait 2.5 hours.
It's not 2.5 hours. They may need to wait like a minute or two, whatever. But,
Okay.
in the 4 months or the couple of months we've been doing this, we really have not had a problem with it.
So thinking of daycares, there must be a lot of volunteers. Do you still accept the volunteers? How do you handle that?
No volunteers.
Wow.
None.
Not at all.
Not at all.
So these kids need individual help. The little kids. What's your protocol with that?
Well, generally, there's enough staffing in the room. So there may be 3 staff in a room with 8 kids.
Are parents helping out?
No, parents are not allowed in the building. We really limit access to the building.
So parents are not helping their kid because they're not in the building at all.
They're in the building. It's
Wow.
a drop off. They drop off on the outside, and we take the children back out to them at the end of the day.
Wow.
They're really limiting all of the contact within the building.
So normally, how many volunteers are in a class of 15 kids?
Normally, we really don't have volunteers.
Oh, normally you don't?
No,
okay.
No, there might be, and we'll see what happens when we have our, kids that might have IEPs that have speech or PT or whatever. We're not quite sure how that's going to work come September, October. We're going to see how that's, we have to work on that.
Yeah.
So those outside itinerant people is the next thing that we need to really kind of figure it out.
Right. Whether they come into the classroom.
Right.
Or you go to them.
Right.
Sounds like the same difference.
Yeah.
That specialist is being exposed to different kids, different classes.
Right. Different states. I have a niece who was an ESL teacher. Their plan is to have her go to 3 different schools. And she's like, no, because of the exposures. It's just like,
right.
Yeah.
So
about all of those things.
It puts a stress on the system in general.
Exactly. Exactly. So you want to spend your time reducing the number of exposures as much as possible.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Are
You
you
know, and
still, are you still, I'm sorry.
that really goes to the contact tracing, that if you do have an exposure and somebody does get it, you know who's been where.
Right.
And
Well,
within
you do
20.
with your school. It's really, it's defined.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's defined. So people sign in and out of their classroom. They sign in. I know what time they go in.
Is that right?
Yeah, they sign into their room.
They have to love what they're doing.
Yes, they do.
Wow.
Kids are fun. The kids are really enjoying themselves. They really are.
Oh, so it's working as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, it is working.
So is there, I think you just answered my question, but is there like a stress, like an underlying stress level? There's, you're bound by all these protocols. Is there that underlying stress that teachers might feel, kids might feel? Is there that kind of anxiety that might be there now that may not normally be there?
You know, I think there are a few kids that we see the stress level, but we can tell that some of it is what they're bringing from home.
Oh,
bringing stress from home.
Talk about that a minute. Yeah.
You know, so, you know, what's going on in the home. We're being very careful. We're not going out. I talked to a parent recently whose daughter is afraid to go outside now. She does not come to us right now, but daughter's afraid to go outside. And that comes from nowhere but the parents, you know, the parents' own anxiety. So we really have to check our anxiety at the door as best as possible and talk about these things together. If you are feeling anxious about something, talk it out with the adults and not bring it into the classroom and not bring it with the children. It's, but the kids in general and the staff in general, everybody feels safe. If you make them feel safe with the protocols, it reduces the anxiety for them. And most of them are saying, you know what, on the weekends I go home and I hang out at home. Kind of like what I do. I go hang out at home.
Great. Well, I have a good question. You have the staff, the lessons that you talk to the staff, you have all this educating the staff. Do you do the same sort of thing with kids, or does the teachers spend time, you know, in the beginning at least, like explaining to the kids what's going on, or they just say, this is what we're doing, and let's just do it, and I don't know which way is more or less anxiety.
They explain to the children what we're doing and why we're doing it, but in simple.
It's simple. Yeah.
It's simple terms. They're all accustomed to wearing masks.
Right.
You know, the 3-year-olds and up or whatever, they're 2-year-olds really, but 3s, 4s, they're like pros with their masks. They have no problem putting them on and going for a walk in the neighborhood or going to the, you know, local playground and keeping their mask on. It's never a question or a problem for them. They really do get it.
That's yeah. Are you still accepting kids into your program, or you
Yes.
are?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You know, so calls are happening all day long. Every day people are looking for spaces.
And you'll have a very strict criteria for accepting.
Yes.
New kids.
You know, so there's a lot of paperwork they have to do. They have to, you know, sign off on all the protocols, and you know, it's a lot of paper for them to go through. They all go through a tour with me after hours, so nobody's exposed, and they hear about all the protocols, everything that we're doing, and what is expected of them.
Wow. And are they locally, or do they come from a distance? Because if I had a kid,
this kind of business, it's local. People need to keep it local.
Yeah. Wow. So what? You know, someone's starting a daycare or doesn't know what, you know, what is striking to you that you can help or advise, or like what's your words of wisdom to the general public like you, and then I'll ask you, what are you going to say to the broad community where who don't have these things under control like you do?
Okay, so starting a business like this, it's not an easy endeavor. You do need to have a good, solid background in early childhood development.
You actually start this daycare?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I opened it in 2010, so we're 10 years in. Happy anniversary in June, 10 years that we opened it. But I've been in the field for 30, you know, so I've worked as a teacher, I've worked as, you know, a director, I've worked as an executive director, and then, you know, this just kind of happened. But, you know, so I have a good, solid theoretical foundation of how children learn and think and etc. You know, so do your homework, know the regulations, get yourself licensed because it does require licensing. And that is a daunting task because there are lots of rules and regulations that go along with this. So anything more than 3 children, 3 or more hours a day, you should be licensed, period. People tend to not do that when they've got their babysitting 4 kids. It's illegal. They should not be doing it.
Whoa.
Whoa. You know, so you're hearing a lot from school-age parents that they want to set up pods and hire teachers, and they've got to be very careful about that because there's lots of rules and lots of liabilities around that they need to think about very, very carefully before they do that.
Yeah, that's the latest thing, yeah.
That is the latest thing, and people need to think about that, guess what? If I have a teacher with 8 kids, and that teacher is with them for 4 or 5 hours a day, they're really not supposed to be doing that. And a teacher under state education should not really be delivering a curriculum without getting it approved by the state education also. So there are 2 places that people need to be very careful on rules, but it's also the liability. What happens if somebody gets hurt or somebody gets sick? Or, you know, all of these protocols that we've put in place, you need to think about all of those things and write them down and be very clear about how you're going to manage all of these little aspects from the second that child comes into your sphere to the second that child leaves your sphere. And I don't think that's really happening. So my message to people is wear your mask, wash your hands, and be very, very careful about what you're doing with children, groups and whatever. Just explore very careful.
I mean, you know, I'm listening to NPR this morning and everyone's hybrid. So do you have any virtual learning at all, or that you're all hands-on?
We did in June, the month of June, that we had a lot of clients that they did not want to come back yet, but they were coming back in July. So we did virtual learning for those kids that were at home, but they're now in care. So at this point, no. Right now, what we're doing is for our families, they're not able to come in the building. They are getting a weekly newsletter that is sent to them by a phone app we have. Plus, they're getting the teacher's weekly lesson plans, plus photos and things, so they know what's going on within the classrooms.
So are you, part of your data system, are you taking into consideration kids that live with their elderly, you know, grandmother who's compromised? Is that part of, you know, your system, and maybe you won't take that person, or you do? And like, well, you know, are you aware of that? Do you ask those questions?
I don't ask about, you know, who's in the household. I'm more concerned about the stability of who's in the household, of maintaining, you know, their own personal pot of people. So if they're, you know, many families live together, you know, and as long as they're not going out and doing dumb things, I'm okay with that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the way you're working, the chances are that kid is not going to bring something home.
Right.
As much as you could,
Exactly.
control it. So, okay, that makes sense to me.
And they have to do what they have to do on their side. Again, that mutual peace. It's the community.
Right. If you get a feeling that the parents don't really care or believe that, do you tell them, you don't belong in this program right now, or?
So far, I haven't come across a parent like that. They are all concerned and they all want to know. That's the only reason that they're with us. And I've had, some parents say, we've heard such good things. We're comfortable here.
Right. That's from the beginning. That's for the last, many years.
Right. Exactly. But you need to make them, comfortable.
Yeah. Well, that speaks well for how this is your baby.
Right. Exactly.
So the parents that you've rejected 3 or 4 years ago, you don't have those parents coming in now.
No.
So what do you say to people who's mandated now by the governor that you can hold sessions and the schools are open, and they feel that beyond their control, whether it's the janitorial staff or the teachers or the lunchroom, whatever they're dealing with really isn't safe. They're really in a dilemma.
Well, I think this is where people have to make their own personal choices, which is basically what the governor said. Schools do their 3 to 5 information sessions for the families and community. They need to synthesize the information, and either they're comfortable with it or they're not. So there are some people that are no way that they're going to send their kids to school.
Right.
They've already made that decision, and then it's the right decision for them if they're that uncomfortable, because if they're that uncomfortable and they send their child to school, their child is going to be very uncomfortable. I think it's worse for the child when they've got that kind of stress, because they know parents are stressed out.
And the teachers also have to make that decision. I saw CNN did an interview with a teacher who wrote his own obituary. So there are a couple of a couple of states, Florida, Iowa. So it's
if I were in Florida, I would not be doing this right now.
Period.
No, I wouldn't be doing it. So I think we have to kind of look and say, okay, Florida, Texas, Georgia, no. I don't think I would be comfortable. However, New York, under 1%, I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah.
As long as we maintain the protocols. And as long as if the numbers start soaring up, then it's a different story.
And even in May, they were coming down.
They were coming down. They were coming down drastically in May.
Yeah. Wow. And you were probably one of the first schools that opened full time, I would imagine, opening in May.
There were centers that were open in Westchester County the entire time.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well,
this became a need, we spoke to our parents in March, and most of them were going to be home. They were at the stay-at-home order, so there was no reason for us to be open. We had a couple of doctors and nurses, and then when it came down to it, it was only one family that really said they needed it. And, my offer was, I can't stay open for one family. What I can do is I can give you recommendations of other places that are open.
Uh-huh.
But
this is going back, what, beginning of May or April?
Yeah, that was March.
Oh, March. Yeah.
Closed down in March.
Right.
I can't run a center with one child.
So you're saying even though it was a stay-at-home order, it was March, 20th or whatever it was, even then they were still essential and some stayed open. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, well, all those doctors and nurses and sanitation and fire people and police and...
Hey, I just got my lighting yesterday, so I'm glad the Con Ed workers were still working. we went a week without electricity.
Yeah, we got ours Saturday.
Well, thank you. This has been enlightening, so to
Okay.
speak.
All right. It's always a pleasure chatting with
And
you.
this is good. I really think this is going to help a lot of people and make people think. And hey, do you have stuffed animal? I mean, like there's 100 of these things, and I think what a resource you are to your community. You know, and not only your professional community of
Mhm.
daycare centers throughout the country. I think people could really look at you as a successful model. You know, with 0 cases since May, and all the work and thinking and filtering and deciding, it is pretty remarkable from my point of view.
Right. Well, it's daunting, but it's doable. That's the whole thing. Daunting, but doable.
You just should be recognized with some kind of a COVID conquering award or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure we've conquered it, but knock on wood, we're good for right now.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on, Marion, and
Okay.
Marion Anderson. And you want to
Cornerstone Children's Center in Scarsdale. Yeah.
And contact Marion, contact me, and I'll filter out some of the people who might want to also contact you.
Okay. Sounds great.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you so much.
And we do have a website, so they can contact me through the website, www.cornerstonechildrenscenter.org.
Okay, let's say that again.
www.cornerstonechildrens with an S center.org.
Right, Cornerstone. It's hard to, you nobody ever heard that, and it's in Scarsdale, and I think, yeah. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, thanks, Rob.
All right.
Signing off.
Bye bye.